And all right, here we go, everyone. This is Doug with the Awakened by Yahuwah group. I am with my brother Sam, my brother Bobby, and sister Kristen, my sister Shoshana, and our brother Dennis. And we are continuing in the book of Maccabees today. So we will all be reading from different versions of Maccabees. I will be reading from the Septuagint Maccabees. Brother Sam, I believe, will be reading from the 1611 King James Apocrypha version of Maccabees, and Sister Bobby and Kristen will be reading from the Sefer, and I believe also Sister Shoshana will. And I was able to send Brother Dennis an actual copy of the PDF of my Septuagint with the Apocrypha, so he will be reading that version of Maccabees. So here we go. I will be starting off the reading, and so here we go. First Maccabees chapter 4. And let me just get there real quick. Then Georgius took 5,000 footmen and 1,000 of the best horsemen and removed out of the camp by night, to the end he might rush in upon the camp of the Yahudim or Judeans and smite them suddenly. And the men of the fortress were his guides. Now when Yahuda heard thereof, he himself removed and the valiant men with him, that he might smite the king's army which was at Emmaus, while as yet the forces were dispersed from the camp. In the mean season came Georgius by night into the camp of Yahuda, and when he found no man there, he sought them in the mountains, for he said, these fellows flee from us. But as soon as it was day, Yahuda showed himself in the plain with 3,000 men, who nevertheless had neither armor nor swords to their minds. And they saw the camp of the heathen, that it was strong and well harnessed, encompassed round about with horsemen, and these were experts of war. Then Yahuda said to the men that were with him, fear ye not their multitude, neither be ye afraid of their assault. Remember how our fathers were saved in the Red Sea, when Pharaoh pursued them with an army. Now therefore let us cry unto heaven, if peradventure Yahuwah will have mercy upon us, and remember the covenant of our fathers, and destroy this host before our face this day. Verse 11, that so all the heathen may know that there is one who delivers and saves, Yashra'al. Then the strangers lifted up their eyes and saw them coming over against them. Wherefore they went out of the camp to battle, but they that were with Yahuda sounded their trumpets. So they joined battle, and the heathen, being discomforted, fled into the plain. Howbeit all the hindmost of them were slain with the sword, for they pursued them unto Gazera, and unto the plains of Idumea, and Azotus, and Jamnia, so that there were slain of them upon 3,000 men. This Yahuda done, returned again with his host from pursuing them, and said to the people, be not greedy of the spoil, inasmuch as there is a battle before us. And Georgius and his host are here by us in the mountain, but stand ye now against our enemies and overcome them, and after this you may boldly take the spoils. And as Yahuda was yet speaking these words, there appeared a part of them looking out of the mountain, who, when they perceived that the Yahudim had put their host to flight, and were burning the tents, for the smoke that was seen declared what was done. When therefore they perceived these things, they were sore afraid, and fleeing also the host of Yehuda in the plain ready to flight. They fled every one into the land of strangers. Then Yehuda returned to spoil the tents, where they got much gold and silver and blue silk and purple of the sea and great riches. After this they went home and sung a song of thanksgiving and praised Yahuwah in heaven, because it is good, because his mercy endures forever. Thus Yashraal had a great salvation that day. Now all the strangers that have escaped came and told Lysias what had happened, who, when he heard thereof, was confounded and discouraged, because neither such things as he would were done unto Yashraal, nor such thing as the king commanded him were come to pass. The next year, therefore, following, Lysias gathered together 70,000 choice men of foot and 5,000 horsemen, that he might subdue them. So they came into Idumea and pitched their tents at Beth Sura, and Yehuda met them with 10,000 men. And when he saw that mighty army, he prayed and said, Blessed are you, O Savior of Yashraal, who does quell the violence of the mighty man by the hand of your servant David, and gave the host of strangers into the hands of Jonathan, the son of Saul, and his armor bearer. Shut up this army in the hand of your people, Yashrael, and let them be confounded in their power and horsemen. Make them to be of no courage, and cause the boldness of their strength to fall away, and let them quake at their destruction. Cast them down with the sword of them that love you, and let all those that know your name praise you with thanksgiving. So they joined battle, and there was slain of the host of Lysias about 5,000 men. Even before them were they slain. Now when Lysias saw his army put to flight, and the manliness of Yehuda's soldiers, and how they were ready either to live or die valiantly, he went into Antiochia and gathered together a company of strangers, and having made his army greater than it was, he purposed to come again into Yehuda, or Judea. Then Yehuda said, and his brothers, Behold, our enemies are discomfited. Let us go up to cleanse and dedicate the sanctuary. Upon this, all the hosts assembled themselves together and went up into Mount Sion. And when they saw the sanctuary desolate, and the altar profaned, and the gates burned, and the shrubs growing in the courts as in a furnace or in one of the mountains, yea, and the priests' chambers pulled down, they rent their clothes and made great lamentation, and cast ashes upon their heads, and fell down flat to the ground upon their faces, and blew an alarm with the trumpets, and cried toward heaven. Then Yehuda appointed certain men to fight against those that were in the fortress, until he had cleansed the sanctuary. So he chose priests of blameless conversation, such as had pleasure in the law, who cleansed the sanctuary and bared out the defiled stones into an unclean place. And when, as they consulted what to do with the altar of burnt offerings, which was profaned, they thought it best to pull it down, lest it should be a reproach to them, because the heathen had defiled it. Wherefore they pulled it down, and laid up stones in the mountain of the temple in a convenient place, until there should come a prophet to show what should be done with them. Then they took whole stones according to the law, and built a new altar according to the former, and made up the sanctuary and the things that were within the temple, and hallowed or set apart the courts. They made also newly set apart vessels, and into the temple they brought the candlestick and the altar of burnt offerings and of incense and the table. And upon the altar they burned incense, and the lamps that were upon the candlestick they lighted, that they might give light in the temple. Verse 51, furthermore, they set loaves upon the table and spread out the veils and finished all the works which they had begun to make. Now on the 25th or 25th day of the 9th month, which is called the month Caslu, in the 148th year, they rose up bedtimes in the morning and offered sacrifice according to the law upon the new altar of burnt offerings, which they had made. Verse 54, look at what time and what day the heathen have profaned it, even in that was it dedicated with psalms and citherns and harps and cymbals. Then all the people fell upon their faces, worshiping and praising the Elohim of heaven, who had given them good success. And so they kept the dedication of the altar 8 days and offered burnt offerings with gladness and sacrificed the sacrifice of salvation and praise. Wow. And decked also the forefront of the temple with crowns of gold and with shields, and the gates and the chambers they renewed and hanged doors upon them. Thus was there very great gladness among the people, for that reproach of the heathen was put away. Moreover, Yahuda and his brothers with the whole congregation of Yashraal ordained that the days of the dedication of the altar should be kept in their season from year to year by the space of 8 days. From the 25th day of the month of Caslu, with myrrh and gladness. Verse 60, at that time also they builded up the Mount Sion with high walls and strong towers round about, lest the Gentiles or nations should come and tread it down as they had done before. Kind of sounds like a partially fulfilled verse right there, because Daniel tells us that the nations shall tread down Jerusalem. So that's pretty interesting. Verse 61, and they set there a garrison to keep it, and fortified Bethsura to preserve it, that the people might have a defense against Idumea. And that is the end of chapter 4 of the first Maccabees. Wow, so I don't know, maybe it's in the next chapter, but I still don't see the miracle oil yet. I don't know if I missed it, but I haven't seen it so far. It might be in the next chapter.
The great miracle was the fact that Yahweh intervened and sent the foreign troops fleeing. That's how I see it. That was the miracle itself, that Yahweh fought the battle for them.
Yeah, definitely. That and pretty much there's a connection there with the salvation of them being saved in the Red Sea, and pretty much this is the chapter where we get the foundation of the feast dedication, and the reason why they made it a man-made ordinance. And it doesn't seem like Yahuwah is like interjecting. This is not what Yahusha talked about in Mark 7:7. So this seems like Yahuwah is okaying this ordinance being put, that they are to keep this feast of dedication 8 days. So
I agree.
It's kind of like that feast Esther did, the Purim. It's a traditional one, but it's not one that's breaking Yahuwah's commandments. It's just a nice tradition, a nice celebration. And really, both of these, that's what honestly Purim and this feast has in common, is that it's celebrating something significant that happened for our forefathers and our foremothers. You know,
Something Yahweh brought to pass for us.
yeah, Yahuwah
For
gave them salvation. He physically gave them salvation from Antiochus and the Greeks,
Mhm.
and actually made them flee. So
Yeah.
yeah, I found that one verse interesting, talking about that no longer would the Gentiles tread foot, the city. So I found it pretty interesting because it sounds a lot like what Daniel prophesied.
Yeah.
So more and more I'm seeing parallels between this is kind of like partial fulfillment of what Daniel talks about when he's in Babylon. So I find that very interesting. I never realized the connection before. This is like almost like a sequel to the book of Daniel almost. Like it's kind of cool.
It's definitely a precursor to the end time abomination of desolation.
Hmm.
And I just see that, and if anybody else wants to talk, go ahead.
Hmm.
I'd say Yahuwah was, obviously when they prayed about it, Yahuwah delivered them. So
Mm-hmm.
he approved of it.
And it also shows us that when we pray, he will deliver us.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have that faith that he will deliver.
I find it
That's
extremely
right.
interesting the significance of the names, that it seems like always that there's something important happening with someone named Yahuda or Judah. So it's always interesting. I'm like, you know, and this guy who has the same name as the betrayer, but this guy is doing something good. This guy is, he's the leader of the Maccabean revolt, and him and his brothers, fought to get Jerusalem back and fought to make to stop the abominations that were happening, and they
Mhm.
took a stand. They were like, we're not going to let these heathen destroy our city, destroy the temple of our creator. And so it was pretty cool to see that there is some symbolicness to the name Judah or Yehuda. There's always something spiritual going on with that name, whether it's the tribe of Yehuda or this guy. It seems like there's always something symbolic happening with that name.
Mm-hmm.
So whoever wants to read the next chapter, let me just check something real quick. I definitely did not realize how long that chapter is. So if it's another 60, 70 verse one, I think we better break it between two people, just so it's not overwhelming. I didn't even realize the last chapter was 60 verses. So let me just see here.
Now there's 68 verses.
Wow, yeah. So I guess we can have let's see, whoever wants to split it, whoever wants to volunteer and, split half of the chapter between two people, I guess we could do it that way.
Yeah, so you want to split it?
Sure.
All right.
Okay. I'll start chapter 5. Let's see. Now, when the nations round about heard that the altar was built and the sanctuary renewed as before, it displeased them very much. Therefore, they sought to destroy the generation of Jacob that was among them, and thereupon they began to slay and destroy the people. Then Yehuda fought against the children of Esau and Edomiah Arabatan, because they besieged Gael. And he gave them a great overthrow, and abated their courage, and took their spoils. Also he remembered the injury of the children of Bean, who had been a snare and an offense unto the people, in that they lay in wait for them in the ways. He shut them up, therefore, in the towers, and encamped against them, and destroyed them utterly, and burned the towers of that place with fire, and all that were therein. Afterward, he passed over to the children of Ammon, where he found a mighty power and much people, and Timotheus their captain. So he fought many battles with them, till at length they were discomfited before him, and he smote them. And when he had taken Jazer with the towns belonging thereto, he returned to Judea. Then the heathen that were at Gilead assembled themselves together against the Yisraelites that were in their quarters, to destroy them. But they fled to the fortress of Bethema, and sent letters unto Yehuda and his brethren. The heathen that are round about us are assembled together against us to destroy us. And they were prepared to come and take the fortress thereunto we are fled, Timotheus being captain of their host. Come now therefore, and deliver us from the hands of many of us as slain. Yes, all our brethren that were in the places of Toby are put to death, their wives and children also. They were carried away captives and borne away their stuff, and they have destroyed there about 1,000 men. While these letters were yet reading, behold, there came other messengers from Galilee with their clothes rent, who reported on this wise, and said, they of the Ptolemies and of Tyrus and of Sidon and all Galilee of the Gentiles are assembled together against us to consume us. Now when Yehuda and the people heard these words, there assembled a great assembly together to consult what they should do for their brethren that were in trouble and assaulted of them. Then said Yehuda unto Shimon his brother, choose you out men, and go and deliver your brethren that are in Galilee. For I and Jonathan my brother will go into the country of Gilead. So he left Joseph, the son of Zacharias, and Azarias, captains of the people, with the remnant of the host in Yehuda to keep it, unto whom he gave commandment, saying, take you the charge of this people, and see that you do not make war against the heathen until the time that we come again. Now unto Shimon were given 3,000 men to go into Galilee, and to Yehuda 8,000 men for the country of Gilead. Then went Shimon into Galilee, where he fought many battles with the heathen, so that the heathen were discomfited by him. And he pursued them unto the gate of the Ptolemies. And there were slain of the heathen about 3,000 men, whose spoils he took. And those that were in Galilee and Arbatus with their wives and their children, and all that they had, took he away with him, and brought them into Yehuda with great joy. Yehuda Macabees also and his brother Jonathan went over Jordan and traveled 3 days' journey in the wilderness, where they met with the Nabathites, who came unto them in a peaceable manner, and told them everything that had happened to their brethren in the land of Gilead, and how that many of them were shut up in Basor and Alima, Kashfur, Maked, and Carnaim. All these cities are strong and great, and that they were shut up in the rest of the cities of the country of Gilead, and that against tomorrow they had appointed to bring their host against the forts, and to take them, and to destroy them all in one day. Whereupon Yehuda and his host turned suddenly by the way of the wilderness unto Basora, and when he had won the city, he slew all the males with the edge of the sword, and took all their spoils, and burned the city with fire, from whence he removed by night, and went till he came to the fortress. And betimes in the morning they looked up, and behold, there was an innumerable people bearing ladders and other engines of war to take the fortress, for they had assaulted them. When Yehuda therefore saw that the battle was begun, and that the cry of the city went up to Shamayim with trumpets and a great sound, he said unto his host, Fight this day for you, your brethren. So he went forth behind them in 3 companies, who sounded their trumpets and cried with prayer. And then the host of Timotheus, knowing it was Macabees, fled from him, wherefore he smote them with a great slaughter, so that there were killed of them that day about 8,000 men. This done, Yehuda turned aside to Mashpha, and after he had assaulted it, he took and slew all the males therein, and received the spoils thereof, and burned it with fire. From thence went he and took Cashmon, Maged, Bosor, and the other cities of the country of Galilee. Okay, you want to pick up, Sue?
Yeah. After these things gathered Timotheus another host, and encamped against Raphon beyond the brook. So Yehuda sent men to espy the host, who brought him word, saying, All the heathen that be round about us are assembled unto them, even a very great host. He has also hired the Abarim to help them, and they have pitched their tents beyond the brook, ready to come and fight against you. Upon this, Yehuda went to meet them. Then Timotheus said unto the captains of his host, When Yehuda and his host come near the brook, if he pass over first unto us, we shall not be able to withstand him, for he will mightily prevail against us. But if he be afraid and camp beyond the river, we shall go over unto him and prevail against him. Now when Yehuda came near the brook, he caused the scribes of the people to remain by the brook, unto whom he gave commandment, saying, Suffer no man to remain in the camp, but let all come to the battle. So he went first over unto them, and all the people after him. Then all the heathen, being discomfited before him, cast away their weapons and fled unto the temple that was at Ashtaroth Karnaim. But they took the city and burned the temple with all that were therein. Thus the Ashtaroth Karnaim subdued, neither could they stand any longer before Yehuda. Then Yehuda gathered together all Yisrael that were in the country of Gilad, from the least unto the greatest, even their women and their children, and their stuff, a very great host, to the end they might come into the land of Yehuda. Now when they came into Ephron, this was a great city in the way as they should go, very well fortified. They could not turn from it, either on the right hand or on the left, but must needs pass through the midst of it. Then they of the city shut them out, and stopped up the gates with stones. Whereupon Yehuda sent unto them in peaceable manner, saying, Let us pass through your land to go into our own country, and none shall you do any hurt. We will only pass through on foot. Howbeit, they would not open unto him. Wherefore Yahudah commanded a proclamation to be made throughout the host, that every man should pitch his tent in the place where he was. So the soldiers pitched and assaulted the city all that day and all that night, till at the length the city was delivered into his hands. Who then slew all the male with the edge of the sword, and razed the city, and took the spoils thereof, and passed through the city over them that were slain. After this went they over Yarden into the great plain before Beit San, and Yahudah gathered together those that came behind, and exhorted the people all the way through, till they came into the land of Yahudah. So they went up to Mount Zion with joy and gladness, where they offered burnt offerings, because not one of them were slain until they had returned in peace. Now, what time as Yahudah and Jonathan were in the land of Gilad, and Shimon his brother in Galil before Akko, Joseph the son of Zachariah and Azariah, captains of the garrisons, heard of the valiant acts and warlike deeds which they had done. Wherefore they said, let us also get us a name, and go fight against the heathen that are round about us. So when they had given charge unto the garrison that was with them, they went toward Javnael. Then came Gorgias and his men out of the city to fight against them. And so it was that Joseph and Azariah were put to flight, and pursued unto the borders of Yahudah. And there were slain that day the people of Israel, about 2,000 men. Thus was there a great overthrow among the children of Israel, because they were not obedient unto Yahudah and his brethren, but thought to do some valiant act. Moreover, these men came not of the seed of those by whose hand deliverance was given unto Israel. Howbeit, the man Yahudah and his brethren were greatly renowned in the sight of all Israel and of all the heathen, wheresoever their name was heard of, insomuch as the people assembled unto them with joyful acclamation. Afterward went Yahudah forth with his brethren, and fought against the children of Esau in the land toward the Negev, where he smote Chevron and the towns thereof, and pulled down the fortress of it, and burned the towers thereof round about. From thence he removed to go into the land of the Pelishtim, and passed through Shomeron. At that time certain priests, desirous to show their valor, were slain in battle, for that they went out to fight unadvisedly. So Yahudah turned to Ashdod in the land of the Pelishtim, and when he had pulled down their altars, and burned their carved images with fire, and spoiled their cities, he returned into the land of Yahudah. It's very very interesting chapter, because it shows the fact that unless Yahuwah is with someone, they cannot do it alone. And these men that tried to do it of themselves and show their valiance to um, make war, they were slain. So we have to have Yahuwah behind us before we do anything. That's what I get out of it.
That is correct. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it reminds me of when they went into the promised land, and said that, oh, there are giants everywhere and all this. When Yahuwah said they can take it, well, when they came back, they said, oh, it's too fierce for us. Then when they decided to go back without Yahuwah, they were slaughtered.
Well, actually, they didn't go because they were told not to. They said Yahuwah.
Well, yeah, in this case, they were, yeah, that's right.
This battle, they were slaughtered. But in that battle, they were told, no, do not go because Yahweh is not with you. But it's a good comparison because it's like two witnesses against the fact that you don't try to do something without Yahweh. You can do nothing without him. Yahusha tells us that. Even Yahusha HaMashiach could do nothing without Yahweh.
He does the Father's will, not his own.
Yes, we have to have the Father's will in all things.
Absolutely.
So, Doug, what do you think?
I would agree with that. I would agree with the fact that they're not trusting in Yahuwah's will. They want to do things on their own terms, kind of like Shaul of the Tanakh, where he instead of just being obedient, he wants to, do all these sacrifices supposedly to please Yahuwah. And Yahuwah sends Samson to him to say, obedience is better than sacrifice. Why have you transgressed the law of Yahuwah? Why have you transgressed his commandment? So I kind of see the same thing there with these guys. They got all zealous and thought, oh man, we can do this. We can obliterate these guys. And they went without the Maccabees, and they got slaughtered because Yahuwah wasn't with them. And they got all cocky. And it's funny too, because the one verse says, let us make a name for ourselves. And I started thinking, oh, where do I hear that before? In the Tower of Babel. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered among the earth. Wonder what spirit was behind these guys.
That was Nimrod.
So,
to make a name for himself.
It was very interesting. And the fact that the Edomites were mentioned was pretty interesting too. I wondered if there's any connection with the Greeks. Like, are the Greeks Edomites? Like, I just wonder, like, are the tribes that are being slaughtered in this chapter, like, referring to, Antiochus Epiphanes and his group, or is this like a new group that are Edomites? Because I got confused a little bit in the beginning of the chapter.
Well, there was they were fighting against Edomites and several other groups of heathen. I don't remember all the names, but the Edomites were definitely among them.
The verse I was referring to was really early in the chapter, was verse 3, where it says Yahudah fought against the children of Esau in Idumea, but I guess that's a different group of people than Antiochus's army. So I'm guessing that's completely different. Unless they, because I think it's talking about a different group of people than the Greeks. And I just wondered. So And it's very interesting, this chapter. This chapter was pretty much them attacking all these pagan nations, and you know, they and it's interesting too how, I don't know if in your guys' translations if it does it, but the Septuagint actually, depending on context, will change between heathen and Gentiles, and I find that interesting.
Hmm.
And in certain verses in this chapter, it will say heathen, and then in certain verses when it's just generally talking about the other nations of the earth, it will say Gentiles. So I thought that was pretty interesting because most Masoretic texts will just, like the King James and all that, they'll just say heathen everywhere. So I just found that pretty interesting.
They're all goyim.
Yeah, like because I know there is a difference between heathen, like when Yahuwah is talking about the heathen, and mainly as far as I've seen in context in most scriptures, most translations, heathen is usually used in context with what type of nations they are, like the nations that serve other Elohim and stuff like that. Usually heathens refer to pagans. So I think I actually agree with the separation between heathen and Gentiles, because it gets confusing when heathens used like generically for Gentiles all the time, and then it's like, I don't know, I feel like it's confusing when certain Bibles do that, because I know there's certain ones like the 1611 that just says heathen everywhere, and you're like, okay, like.
Hmm.
So I don't know, that's just something that came to my mind, especially in this chapter. It kind of, it makes a little bit more sense with the different terminology and stuff like that. And so I think mine says heathen where it starts talking about these nations attacking Yashrael. Let me see where it is right here, which verse it is. I think it's right after where they attack the Edomites, children of the Ammonites. Yeah, verse 9 in the Septuagint says, "Then the heathen that were at Gilead or Galiad assembled themselves together against the Yashraelites that were in their quarters to destroy them, but they fled to the fortress of Dathema." And it seems like that's the only time in this chapter heathen is being used, which is interesting. It's a pretty interesting difference. So I just found that pretty cool. So I don't have anything else to add. I just wanted to bring that up.
Well, it's obvious that they all wanted to destroy Israel, and so they must have worshipped other deities. They would have had to, because if they worshipped Yahweh, they would never want to praise Him.
Yeah, and the geography in this chapter, I don't know if anyone caught this, but a couple of familiar names that I caught was Hebron. A lot of the times in the Torah, there the Israelites would go into Hebron to possess the land of Canaan and stuff like that. So it was pretty interesting seeing that name again. So I don't know what symbolically it has to do with, but I found that pretty interesting. Let me see if I can find the verse right here where it talks about Hebron. Let me see. I think it's early in the chapter where it talks about, see here, wait and wait for days. Let's see, I'm up to 6 or 7 here. Yezer, the towns belonging to there too, he returned into Yehuda. Dathema is mentioned. Let's see. And let's see here. Let's see Galilee here, which is interesting. All right. Then they start talking about Sidon, which is another place, in verse 15. I'm just trying to see real quick if I can find that verse in this chapter. And I don't know, maybe I was mistaken, but I thought I saw Hebron in this chapter. Anyway, maybe I was mistaken. So let's see here. Sister Shoshana and Dennis have read. I have read. Let's see, Brother Sam. I'm going to check first and see how long the next chapter is. I don't want to give you too long of one.
No problem, brother.
Let's see here. Yeah. All right. Well, me and you could share this chapter. I'll read half, and you could read half. So, first Maccabees chapter 6. At that time, King Antiochus, traveling through the high countries, heard say that Elymais in the country of Persia was a city greatly renowned for riches, silver and gold, and that there was in it a very rich temple wherein were coverings of gold and breastplates and shields, with Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian king who reigned first among the Grecians, had left there. Wherefore he came and sought to take the city and to spoil it, but he was not able, because they of the city, having had warning thereof, rose up against him in battle. So he fled and departed there with great heaviness and returned to Babylon. Moreover, there came one who brought him tidings into Persia that the armies which went against the land of Yehuda were put to flight, and that Lysias, who went forth first with a great power, was driven away by the Yahudim, and that they were made strong by the armor and power and store of spoils which they had gotten of the armies whom they had destroyed. Also that they had pulled down the abomination which he had set up, the altar in Jerusalem, and that they had compassed about the sanctuary with high walls as before, and his city Beth Surah. Now when the king heard these words, he was astonished and sore moved, whereupon he laid him down upon his bed and fell sick for grief, because it had not befallen him as he looked for. And there he continued many days, for his grief was ever more and more, and he had account that he should die. Wherefore he called for all his friends and said unto them, the sleep is gone from mine eyes, and my heart failed for very care. And I thought with myself, into what tribulation I am come, and how great a flood of misery is it. Interesting terminology. Wherein now I am, for I was bountiful and beloved in my power. But now I remember the evils that I did at Jerusalem, that I took all the vessels of gold and silver that were therein, and sent to destroy the inhabitants of Yehuda without a cause. I perceive therefore that for this cause these troubles are come upon me, and behold, I perish through great grief in a strange land. Then called he for Philip, one of his friends, who he made ruler over all his realm, and gave him the crown and his robe and his signet, to the end he should bring up his son Antiochus and nourish him up for the kingdom. So King Antiochus died there in the 149th year. Now when Lysias knew that the king was dead, he set up Antiochus his son, whom he had brought up being young, to reign in his stead, and his name he called Eupator. Interesting name. About this time, they that were in the tower shut up the Yashreelites round about the sanctuary, and sought always their hurt. and the strengthening of the heathen. Wherefore Yahudah, verse 19, purposed to destroy them, called all the people together to besiege them. So they came together and besieged them in the 150th year, and he made mounts for shot against them and other engines. Howbeit certain of them that were besieged not forth, unto whom some unrighteous men of Yashrael joined themselves, and they went unto the king and said, How long will it be there? How long will it be until you execute judgment and avenge our brothers? Wow. Okay, I'm writing that cross-reference down. That's very interesting. Okay, that's a little correlation with the book of Revelations. We have been willing to serve your father. And hold on a sec. We will be willing to serve your father and to do as he would have us and to obey his commandments, for which cause they of our nation besiege the tower and are alienated from us. Moreover, as many of us as they could light on, they slew and spoiled our inheritance. Neither have they stretched out their hand against us only, but also against their borders. And behold, this day are they besieging the tower at Jerusalem to take it. The sanctuary also and Beth Surah have they fortified. Wherefore, if you do not prevent them quickly, they will do the greater things than these. Neither shall you be able to rule them. Wow. That seems like another cross-reference to Yahusha saying, you shall do greater works than mine. So that's a little correlation there. Same type of terminology. Verse 28. Now when the king heard this, he was angry and gathered together all his friends and captains of his army and those that had charge of the horse. There came also unto him from our other kingdoms and from isles of the sea bands of hired soldiers, so that the number of his army was 100,000 footmen and 20,000 horsemen and 30 elephants exercised in battle. I will let my brother Sam now finish the chapter. We are at verse 31, and I will mute myself.
These went through Idumea and pitched against Bethsura, which they assaulted many days, making engines of war. But they of Bethsura came out and burned them with fire and fought valiantly. Upon this, Yehuda removed from the tower and pitched in Bethzacharias over against the king's camp. Then the king, rising very early, marched fiercely with his host toward Bethzacharias, where his armies made them ready to battle, and sounded the trumpets. And to the end they might provoke the elephants to fight. They showed them the blood of grapes and mulberries. Moreover, they divided the beasts among the armies, and for every elephant they appointed 1,000 men, armed with coats of mail, and with helmets of brass on their heads. And beside this, for every beast were ordained 500 horsemen of the best. Verse 36, these were ready at every occasion, wheresoever the beast was, and whithersoever the beast went, they went also, neither departed they from him. And upon the beasts were their strong towers of wood, which covered every one of them, and were girt fast unto them with devices. There were also upon every one 32 strong men that fought upon them, beside the Indian that ruled him. As for the remnant of the horsemen, they set them on this side and that side at the two parts of the host, giving them signs what to do, and being harnessed all over amidst the ranks. Now when the sun shone upon the shields of gold and brass, the mountains glistered therewith, and shined like lamps of fire. So part of the king's army being spread upon the high mountains, and part on the valleys below, they marched on safely and in order. Wherefore all that heard the noise of their multitude, and the marching of the company, and the rattling of the harness, were moved, for the army was very great and mighty. Then Yahuda and his host drew near, and entered into battle, and there were slain of the king's army 600 men. Eleazar also, surnamed Savaran, perceiving that one of the beasts armed with royal harness was higher than all the rest, and supposing that the king was upon him, put himself in jeopardy, to the end he might deliver his people, and get him a perpetual name. Verse 45. Wherefore he ran upon him courageously through the midst of the battle, slaying on the right hand and on the left, so that they were divided from him on both sides. Which done, he crept up under the elephant, and thrust him under, and slew him, whereupon the elephant fell down upon him, and there he died. Howbeit the rest of the Yahudim, seeing the strength of the king, and the violence of his forces, turned away from them. Then the king's army went up to Rayushalayim to meet them, and the king pitched his tents against Yehuda, and against Mount Sion. But with them that were in Bethsura he made peace, for they came out of the city, because they had no victuals there to endure the siege, it being a year of rest to the land. Verse 50. So the king took Bethsura, and set a garrison there to keep it. As for the sanctuary, he besieged it many days, and set there artillery with engines and instruments to cast fire and stones, and pieces to cast darts and slings. Whereupon they also made engines against their engines, and held them battle a long season. Yet at the last, their vessels being without victuals, for it was the 7th year, and they in Yehuda that were delivered from the Gentiles had eaten up the residue of the store, there were but a few left in the sanctuary, because the famine did so prevail against them, that they were fain to disperse themselves, every man to his own place. At that time Lysias heard say that Philip, whom Antiochus the king, whiles he lived, had appointed to bring up his son Antiochus, that he might be king, was returned out of Persia and Media, and the king's host also that went with him, and that he sought to take unto him the ruling of the affairs. Verse 57. Wherefore he went in all haste, and said to the king and the captains of the host and the company, We decay daily, and our victuals are but small, and the place we lay siege unto is strong, and the affairs of the kingdom lie upon us. Now therefore let us be friends with these men, and make peace with them, and with all their nation, and covenant with them, that they shall live after their laws, as they did before. For they are therefore displeased, and have done all these things, because we abolished their laws. Verse 60. So the king and the princes were content, wherefore he sent unto them to make peace, and they accepted thereof. Also the king and the princes made an oath unto them, whereupon they went out of the stronghold. Then the king entered into Mount Sion, but when he saw the strength of the place, he broke his oath that he had made, and gave commandment to pull down the wall round about. Afterward departed he in all haste, and returned unto Antiochia, where he found Philip to be master of the city. So he fought against him, and took the city by force.
Wow.
It's interesting that they used elephants to battle It's kind of like the modern tank, only a biological tank.
Hmm. Yeah, very interesting.
And the the guy who decided to thrust the elephant through uh, was very foolish because the elephant, of course, fell upon him and killed him. Um, thought that was rather foolish.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, elephants kind of, I guess, were very common back then, kind of like soldiers on horses. So that's kind of interesting. The I
I will be so happy when the kingdom is here and they will learn war no more. And
hmm.
the poor beasts that they use, just what choice did they have? The horses, the elephants.
Hmm. It was interesting early in the chapter. I got actually more out of the first 20, 30 verses because it seemed like on his deathbed, Antiochus the dad seems to be almost like repenting on his deathbed, like, man, like all this I did to the Yahudim people, and now basically he's like realizing he's getting what he deserves. He's getting,
Mm-hmm.
his what was the good old saying go, you reap what you sow. And he's starting to
Yeah,
realize that. He's like, oh man, I messed up. So
and he'll have to give an account to Yahuwah
mm,
in the great white throne judgment.
mm. So wow, it's a lot of wars. I did not realize it. I always thought it was like one big battle in the Maccabees, but wow, there's a lot of other armies and other nations that are involved in this, in these books. I had no idea. Wow.
Unfortunately, the earth has been at war ever since the beginning, when Adam and his wife chose to take of the tree of good and evil. It just changed everything. And the last couple of 100 years, there have been wars everywhere, just one after the other, after the other, after the other. And we know that, according to Eric John Phelps, who owns the website VaticanAssassins.org, he says that all of these wars were fought for the Pope and for the Catholic Church. And bringing the Catholic Church into various places uh, was the whole idea of a lot of these wars. And just senseless, totally senseless war is. So does anyone else have any comments?
Oh, my bad. I didn't even realize I was muted. I also wanted to comment on that. My bad about that. I didn't even realize I muted myself. I wanted to comment on the wars comment you just brought up, and actually, I believe that the wars were brought on actually upon Genesis 6, and I actually think that the Watchers pretty much they they brought the art of making war to us, and it says in extra biblical texts like Enoch, it says that they taught mankind the art of making breastplates, shields, armor, swords. So we didn't even have that before them. And the only violence that was really from the beginning that I can remember is Cain, maybe being the first murderer. And from that's the only time I can see it in Genesis where there's actual like war being committed. But I think it really escalated with the Watchers. It because they taught us how to make war. They taught us, how to make swords and all that. And from that you had chaos and pretty much bloodshed everywhere. And that was part of the reason for the flood. And I think, after the flood, unfortunately, it returned with the Tower of Babel, and it kept escalating because you had nations being created from the Tower of Babel. You had 70 nations, and all of them still kept the ways that Nimrod taught, which was worship demons, violence, sexual immorality, and they kept his ways instead of returning to Yahuwah. And in the book of Jasher, Abraham talks about that. And, he says, like, why are you making the people err? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, he rebukes Nimrod because Nimrod's supposed to be a leader, a king. And he was a king before he became wicked, according to Jasher. And he was actually righteous before he perversed his way. And, Abraham looks at, basically harshly rebukes him and says, what are you doing? You're making these people worship these gods of wood and stone. What is wrong with you? And he gets Nimrod to say, yeah, they can't speak, they can't hear. What are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, so why do you worship them? Like, why do you tell your people to worship them? And so for me personally, that's where wars came from, was the Watchers. And and hopefully that will all be done away with when Satan's destroyed, and there's a new heaven and new earth. There won't be any sin left. So that's all I have to say.
Yes, I definitely would agree that the Watchers taught men how to war, and they will learn war no more in the millennium. And from there on, the only war that comes during that 1,000 years or right after the 1,000 years is that war in Ezekiel 38, Gog and Magog, where the heathen come against Jerusalem again, and which is living in peace and unwalled cities, and Yahweh takes care of them. And that is the last war. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. On that note, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to look ahead and see how long this next chapter is. So we're starting chapter 7. Let's see how lengthy this one is. This one's 50 verses. Okay, so let me see here. I think we're going to just take a minor break, like 5-10 minute break. See here, just pause the recording.
All right, so we're back, and we are ending the study for tonight, guys. Tune in next time. This is Brother Doug with Brother Sam and Brother Shoshana, and Brother Dennis. Let me unmute you. Everyone say goodbye to our viewers, and tune in next time. Bye to our viewers. Shalom. May Yahuwah and Yahushua bless you guys.
We enjoyed it very much.
End meeting, not end meeting, but
Recording.
so stop recording.